We're about to have a look at a debate where Dave Smith basically destroyed Joe Walsh and Piers Morgan live on Piers Morgan's show. Dave Smith is a libertarian, he's a comedian, and he's actually really smart, and Joe Walsh is a former Republican presidential candidate, now turned woke. And of course, Piers Morgan is a lefty, according to people on the right, and he's a MAGA supporter, according to people on the left, so who knows, right? So let's have a look at Dave Smith completely embarrassing Piers Morgan on his own show. But before we do, allow me to tell you about today's sponsor, Aura. Have you ever felt that sinking feeling in your stomach when you heard that a company you trust has announced a data breach involving your personal information? I had that experience a while back, and it really made me reflect on just how vulnerable we can be. A few years ago, I received an email from a popular online retailer I frequently shopped at. The subject line read, "Important security update." My heart raced as I clicked on it, and my worst fears were confirmed. They had experienced a data breach that compromised the personal information of millions of users, including mine. They detailed how hackers had accessed sensitive data, including full names, addresses, dates of birth, and most alarmingly, social security numbers. In that moment, I felt a mix of anger and panic. How could this happen to me? I had trusted this company. I immediately started to think about the potential consequences. What if someone used my information to open a credit card in my name? What if I became a victim of identity theft? This incident was a wake-up call for me, and it highlighted the importance of having solid protection against identity theft. That's when I discovered this video's sponsor, Aura. And let me tell you, it has been a game changer. Aura is a fantastic tool to help protect your personal information and keep your identity safe. Aura provides comprehensive identity theft protection features that monitor your data across billions of data points, including the dark web and public records. One of the most compelling aspects of Aura is their identity theft protection. They alert you if your social security number or other personal information is found in potentially compromised areas. If anything suspicious happens, you can rest easy knowing that every adult on the account, up to 5 people, receives $1 million in identity theft insurance to help cover eligible losses and expenses. This is a total of up to $5 million in coverage. If you're as concerned about your personal information as I am, I highly recommend trying out Aura. You can go to my link at aura.com/America to get a 14-day free trial and see if any of your personal data has been exposed. It's a fantastic opportunity to take control of your online security. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches and brokers. If you don't want to either, check out Aura. With their suite of protection features, you can safeguard your identity and keep your information private. Remember, the internet can be a dangerous place, but with tools like Aura, you don't have to face it alone. Thanks for watching, and be sure to click the link in the description to start your free trial today.
Gillian, when has NATO ever acted offensively unilaterally rather than defensively?
Oh, excuse me. Well, okay, you threw unilaterally in there. Yes. Serbia, Libya, Afghanistan.
No, I'm talking about unilaterally, where NATO has precipitated the military action and not acted in a defensive capacity. Dave?
Well, Piers, I mean, first of all, I'll just say that I didn't realize I was doing this panel with 2 Ukrainian assets who were going to be spreading Zelensky talking points. So I'm appalled.
Touche.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That is a brain dead non-argument. So let me not start with that. Okay. Now look, Piers, if you're gonna make the standard, okay, yes, NATO took aggressive action in Serbia, in Libya, in Afghanistan, but it wasn't unilateral. The US was involved. Like, okay, but it's not self-evident that that should be the standard. And to Jillian's point, look, it doesn't make you an asset of a foreign government to say, hey, as John Mearsheimer puts it, let's have some strategic empathy here. Let's put ourselves in the position of our enemy or the hostile foreign government. Right. And in 2008, I'd highly recommend anyone who wants to can go find this online. We only know about this because the heroic Julian Assange leaked it. But the current CIA director, Burns, at the time was the ambassador to Russia. And he wrote a private cable back to then Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. And it's titled "Niet means Niet." And what he said in that memo to the Secretary of State was that he's talked to everyone in Russia, and it's not Vladimir Putin. It's his sharpest liberal critics. It's his sharpest right-wing critics. They are unanimous that Ukrainian entry into NATO is the brightest of red lines for them, and they will intervene to stop that. Now, you can feel however you feel about that. Maybe you could say, hey, Ukraine ought to have the right to join whatever military alliance they want. Let's be real here for a second. Does Mexico have a right to join a military alliance with China? Do you think we would put up with that? What do you think Washington, D.C. would do if the Soviet Union, let's say, still existed, and they toppled the government in Canada and put in their own pro-Soviet government?
So you would, just to be clear, Dave, you wouldn't want America to defend Taiwan, say, if they got invaded by China, by that yardstick?
Well, listen, it's not even a matter of want.
Well, yes or no?
Listen. Well, here's the problem is this thing called reality, Piers. It's kind of like asking if Washington, D.C., let's just say our government.
Well, what's the answer to my question?
Well, but I am answering your question. Just give me one.
Would you want America to go to Taiwan's aid if it was invaded by China?
And let me just explain what my point is here. If Washington, D.C. decided we're taking Mexico City, would you want China to stop us from doing that? The reality is China can't stop us from doing that. You see, we got this empire mentality in America where we think we can decide what goes on all around the world. Now, the point, again, back to this current conflict, 2 months after the Niet means Niet memo was sent, at the Bucharest summit, George W. Bush strong-armed it through. We announced that Ukraine was coming into NATO. We've constantly, at every step, even when Vladimir Putin has had reasonable demands, you cannot bring my biggest neighbor into your military alliance, we have thrown the middle finger in his face.
The biggest mistake, honestly, I think the biggest mistake. Well, look, I think the biggest mistake we made with Ukraine was we made them give up their nuclear deterrent. If they still had their nuclear deterrent, they wouldn't have to worry about Vladimir Putin rattling his nuclear saber because they'd have their own to fire back at him, and he wouldn't have invaded. So that was a big strategic error as well. But I'm not oblivious to the history, and I don't think you can ignore it. I mean, Joe, it's complex, like a lot of these, like Israel and Gaza and Hamas, like all these things. These are complicated historical issues.
But then why, when Tulsi brings up the history, is she a Russian asset?
I agree with it.
That's just what I want to understand.
I agree with it.
So,
but Gillian, I agree with it. But Joe.
And I'm glad Jillian Michaels said that right there, because earlier in the conversation, Piers Morgan and Joe Walsh were basically going at Tulsi Gabbard, accusing her of being a Russian asset and saying that she shouldn't be a part of Trump's cabinet. And that's why Dave Smith in the beginning of this said, well, I didn't know I was going to be coming on here with 2 Ukrainian assets, right? Basically treating them the same way that they were treating Tulsi Gabbard. And so I think it's great that Jillian Michaels is actually a part of this conversation. She's somebody on the left that is coming around, frankly, from what I've seen. I don't watch a whole lot of her, but I'm seeing more and more of her lately. And she's pretty much in the process of becoming red-pilled, or at least in my opinion. You can let me know in the comments if you disagree. But let's go ahead and continue this video.
What is your response to what Dave says there, which Gillian also believes, which Tulsi also believes, that basically the West collectively goaded Putin by doing what he has specifically said, I don't want you to do?
Again, and to answer Gillian and to answer your Pierce, it's because her side is utterly one-sided. Jillian, you said all Tulsi believes in is peace. And if that's true, all she does is attack America and defend Russia when we talk about peace. Look, I understand the situation's complicated, but Russia invaded a sovereign nation. Putin's to blame for that, not America. That's my worldview. Understanding that we're not blameless, Putin is to blame for making that decision. Tulsi Gabbard has a 10-year history, accelerated by 2.5 years ago, of always blaming America and always defending Russia in every single thing she's said. If you're that one-sided in your view, if you're always defending Putin and you're always attacking this country, that's someone I would not trust to be in charge of our nation's intelligence.
Okay,
yes.
okay. Let me just pivot slightly. Dave, you posted this. Marco Rubio is a disaster. Might as well give Liz Cheney the State Department. Awful sign. Why are you so anti-Rubio? But I mean, most other people have said, actually, he's one of the sort of grown-up picks in this list.
Yeah, well, most of the people who are saying that are making the ridiculous arguments that we've heard here today. And they're also the people who essentially, the real issue here, right, is that essentially you have this divide between people who support the foreign policy consensus of the last 20 years. And so it's very easy. See, the thing is here, Joe, it makes the point, right? Like, oh, she's always blaming America. This is what the George W. Bush Republicans post 9/11, this was their brain dead reply to every single left-winger who would criticize their foreign policy. Oh, you're the blame America first crowd or something like that. Yes. Vladimir Putin did invade Ukraine, and that was wrong. He should not have invaded Ukraine. The United States of America is not clean in this invasion game either. And over the last 20 plus years, we have had wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Yemen. Every last one of them was sold on lies, has resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of innocent people, has cost trillions of dollars, and has left the area worse than it was before we invaded or before we had, backed
Dave,
the invaders.
I agree with a lot of that. Dave, I agree with a lot of that. But I know, Dave, I agree with a lot of that. But Tulsi Gabbard said,
let me finish the point. We'll see if you agree.
We're every bit as bad as Russia. Do you believe we're every bit as bad as Putin? Every bit? That's what she said.
Well, listen, Joe. Okay, that's fine. What instead of just like it's this emotional game? Who do you think's worse? You tell me the metric. You tell me the metric. Innocent people killed. Countries invaded. What's the metric? And then I'll tell you who's worse on that.
Defender of peace around the world, a history of defending peace and freedom. Yes, imperfect.
Wait, hold on. Listen, Piers.
Yes, have made a lot of mistakes. Yes,
okay,
right. Invaded
now filibuster because you don't want to answer the obvious. Now, Piers, our previous debate aside, I'll give you World War II.
Well, I would say murdering and jailing your political opponents. I would say rigging an election so you get nearly 90% of the vote because you punish people who don't vote for you, blah, blah, blah. I mean, there are all sorts of reasons why Vladimir Putin runs Russia like a mafia boss, which is not how America's won. Now, you might argue, and I think you have a point, because I oppose, as you know.
Is it not, Piers?
I oppose the Iran war very vociferously. But do you think America runs around poisoning opponents in streets in Europe, for example? Do you think it rigs an election so that 90% of the people feel obliged to vote for someone, etc.?
Well, so here's the thing, Piers, right? A lot of times there's in more primitive countries, there's a more naked form of corruption that is more brutal in a way and is more obvious. So yes, it's true that America doesn't resort to kind of some of these tactics. What America will do, right? Like if we don't like the fact that, say, Yanukovych, the democratically elected president of Ukraine, decided he didn't want to join the European Union, instead wanted to do a partnership with Putin. No, we won't poison him, but we'll just foment color-coded revolution, overthrow that government, and install Victoria Nuland's new hand-picked, members. Now, other countries who don't have the power to do that result to these other, tactics. I'm not supporting any of it. I think all of it's wrong. But let's be honest here. I mean, America has been the most war-hungry country in the world over the last 25 years, and why can't we admit that?
Dave, can I just ask one real quick question? All the mistakes we've made aside, is America a force for good around the world, yes or no? A force for good?
I think this is a childish, simplistic question. We are a force for good and a force for bad. And these wars. Yeah. Listen, Joe. The thing about it is the problem is that. Hold on. Okay, Joe, you asked. I'm answering your question. The problem is
we're not ending wars in Armenia or South Sudan.
Yes, listen. This is
sorry, Dave.
The point here is that. No, I'm sorry. Look, the point here is that The issue is that I don't think you actually know anything about what you're talking about. And so when you say that the war in Iraq was a mistake, like it was a whoopsie, no, it wasn't. Go read the Project for a New American Century. They were planning, the neoconservatives who took control of the George W. Bush administration were planning this war for years before 9/11. The weapons of mass destruction and the Saddam. Right. So let me finish the point instead of cutting me off by saying you agree with me. Because yes, I know you agree because I'm making an undeniably great point. The weapons of mass destruction, the Saddam.
I just asked, hey, well, you know what, Dave? You're so smart.
I'm not even that smart. I'm not that smart. I'm just arguing with brain-dead morons.
You couldn't answer a simple question. Is America historically, have we been generally a force for good around the world? Yes or no?
Dude, shut up.
Again, I'll answer the question again. It's a dumb, stupid, second grader question. We've been both a force for good and force for bad.
Okay, look, but very quickly.
We've been a force for good in the world.
Very quickly, to wrap this part of it.
Warfare machine.
Right, but Dave, to wrap this part of it, you haven't actually talked about Marco Rubio. What is your objection to him being Secretary of State?
Piers, this is the fun thing about doing your show. The second you said that, I completely forgot the question was about Marco Rubio. I didn't even remember what we were talking about. So essentially,
and it doesn't matter.
The point. So Marco Rubio, is he? Oh, yeah. Okay. So the point that I was making initially is that Marco Rubio is, to his core, somebody who supports the neoliberal, neoconservative foreign policy of the last 25 years. He's somebody who's every one of those disastrous wars that I just mentioned, he was there cheerleading for them and demonizing everybody who opposed them. He's also a hawk on Palestine. He's a hawk on South America. And I just think that in general, particularly with our country being $35+ trillion in debt, having all of these disastrous wars over the last few decades, and Donald Trump at least somewhat symbolizing a break from that tradition and an America first, more non-interventionist kind of policy, I'm very disappointed to see him lead the State Department.
And I'll wholeheartedly agree with that last point that Dave Smith made there about Trump being at least somewhat of a break from what we've been getting out of the Republican Party for the last 20 years, right? And hopefully Trump's ways of peace through strength, alliances that, enrich everybody involved, this type of scenario, this type of approach can hopefully end these seemingly never-ending wars, right? Whether it's Ukraine and Russia or us over in the Middle East somewhere. I think Americans have set a mandate to Donald Trump that we want deportations, we want safe borders, we want better policies for Americans. We want safe neighborhoods and streets. We want affordable prices at the grocery store and at the gas pumps. And we want better living wages. We don't want a government that's going to import a bunch of people to undercut our wages when we're holding out for jobs so that we can actually provide for our families the way that our fathers promised us. And we're tired of seeing our young men and women die in needless wars that only enrich the banks, the military industrial complex. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this video. And I want to say it's been a couple weeks. I've been super sick, so it's really nice to actually be back in the chair talking to you guys. And I'll remind you that you can catch me live every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time with the Jar Openers podcast. We have a lot of fun over there. You can also join the Discord by clicking the link down in the description. And with that, thank you guys for watching to the end, and I'll see everybody in the next video.